Not all buildings are as tedious or as dull as the bog-standard homes most of us live in. Some architects, especially those with a penchant for subversion, have truly redefined what we think a building can look like. There are some real-life structures that are so insane they even give fictional places like the Fortress of Solitude and Hogwarts a run for their money. One of the most intriguing examples is the Atomium. This landmark building in Brussels was constructed for the 1958 Brussels World Expo as a celebration of the decade's faith in scientific progress. To encapsulate this faith, the structure was designed to look like 9 iron atoms in the shape of the body-centered cubic unit cell of an iron crystal, albeit magnified 165 million times. Originally intended as a temporary piece, just like London's Millennium Eye, it captured the imaginations and hearts of the locals in a way nobody could have seen coming, and still proudly stands today. Just building it was a marvel technical feat that challenged everyone involved. At completion, it stands 335 feet tall, and each of the stainless steel-clad spheres is 60 feet. These days, the unique-looking Atomium serves as a museum with the exhibition spaces spread across 3 of the 9 spheres. The bottom sphere is reserved for a permanent exhibition dedicated to the 58 Expo and chronicling the Atomium's construction. The second houses a rotating roster of temporary exhibits, and the third serves as a rentable space for events such as concerts, films, conferences, and parties. The top sphere holds an acclaimed restaurant, and the 6th sphere is dedicated to children's entertainment and education. The remaining 3 spheres are not open to the public, and in all our research, we can't quite determine why. Perhaps they are unsafe, or maybe they are full of facilities for the staff of the exhibits and restaurants, or who knows, maybe they're haunted. Separate pieces all coming together to form one cohesive whole is actually something of a theme in more creative architecture, with another well-celebrated example being the Kubuswoningen. Known more affectionately as the Cube Houses, the Kubuswoningen in Rotterdam is one of the city's most beloved and iconic attractions. This bizarre residential development was designed by renowned Dutch architect Piet Blom and consists of 38 homes that are each literally in a perfect cube shape and stand tilted by 45 degrees. Rotterdam is actually famous for having some of the most innovative and subversive architecture in the world, but despite all the aesthetically creative structures to have been built in the 30 years since the cube houses were completed, and just like in many centuries before, they still remain one of the city's most eye-catching of developments. After experimenting with a cubist-inspired approach to architecture in the Dutch city of Helmond, Blom was approached by the city planners of Rotterdam to take his ideas and really run with them, which led to the creation of the cube houses. The idea behind the Kubuswoningen is that they are supposed to represent an abstract interpretation of a forest, each triangular roof symbolizing a treetop. But the houses are just oddly shaped for the sake of it. There is a method to the madness. The core idea of the Kubuswoningen is to optimize space, as their design enables a better distribution of the rooms. Each of the houses has 3 floors, including a ground floor entrance area, an open kitchen, and a living room on the 1st floor, bathrooms and bedrooms on the 2nd floor, and an open-top garden based on the top floor. And these curious little cubes are far from the only structure with something intriguing atop the room. Bayer Bittori is a restaurant and cocktail bar that audaciously brags that it has one of the greatest views in the world. Considering it is overlooking the Copper Canyon in Chihuahua, it is probably a brag it has every right to make. As you tuck into your meal, you can treat yourself to a panoramic view of the canyon, as well as looking out at the gorgeous Pasasiechek Falls. The Bayer Bittori has 2 separate levels, each serving a distinct function. One is dedicated to indulgence of the finest order, serving up some of the best food and alcohol in the world. The other is all about the location, offering a lounge and observation deck so that guests can really enjoy the remarkable views. The whole structure beautifully blends the futuristic open-plan style of modern architecture with natural materials that are perfectly in sync with the surrounding landscape. Bayer Bittori does have a sizable downside, however, in that the dining floor lacks a roof, meaning the restaurant is entirely al fresco. This isn't because of budget complaints or an oversight, It is intentional because, in the mostly hot weather of Mexico, this will no doubt offer a beautiful breeze to complement the dining experience. But come nighttime and colder seasons, diners may find themselves as chilly as if they were being hugged by the Night King himself. No amount of Michelin stars can make up for torrential rains pouring down on you as you attempt to tuck into your soup. It was a bold decision in the design process, but at least it makes one's dining experience memorable. Despite the risk of being snowed on as you try to eat cheesecake, the Bayer Vittoria remains a notable tourist attraction. In fact, many of the world's craziest buildings are fantastic for the tourism trade. Pretty much everyone who has made a journey down to Montreal has had their attention captured by a peculiar building resting on the waterfront, and many have traveled all the way there just to see it. This is Habitat 67, an experimental take on modular architecture which was constructed back in, no points for guessing this right, 1967. The idea behind modular architecture is to use geometric patterns to create buildings that imitate the clumsier and less precise aesthetic of organically grown structures, such as trees or mountains. Habitat 67 could be described as looking like a round of Tetris paused mid-game, just a clustered mess of angles and shapes with more sharp edges than you can sanely count. Designed by Moshe Safdie, Habitat 67 has often been described as a masterpiece in the brutalist movement, but Safdie himself insisted it was actually a reaction against brutalism. For those of you unfamiliar with architecture movements, brutalism is a style that emerged in the mid-20th century and gained further traction through the 50s and 60s. It is characterized by incredibly simplistic blocky structures with exposed concrete, often featuring bare building materials. The style is most commonly used in the design of such institutional buildings as courts, city halls, and libraries. Habitat 67 was intended as a parody of brutalism, a complicated mass of these simple and blocky shapes. Where do you stand on the debate? Is Habitat 67 the greatest brutalist structure ever designed, or the perfect rebellion against the whole movement? Be sure to let us know what you think in the comments. Habitat 67 is now so iconic that in 2017 it even received its own commemorative stamp, though Safdie had anticipated a far more significant legacy. He had the rather ambitious hope that Habitat 67 would revolutionize affordable housing and possibly launch a new wave of prefabricated modular developments. But this didn't exactly happen the way he planned. Instead, it merely stands proud as an interesting curiosity that looks like a pile of underfunded libraries balanced atop each other at funny angles. With the aforementioned movement being all about blocky buildings, one truly baffling structure that is definitely not brutalist is the Krivi Domek, or the Crooked House, which is curvier than Christian Hendricks. It looks like a home as seen in the reflection of a crazy house mirror, or through the eyes of a drunk man, thanks to the peculiar warping effect. The 43,000 square foot building was built in 2004 and has been grabbing attention ever since. Part of the residence shopping center, the whole place looks almost like you're looking at it through water. Designed by the Polish architects Schotyński and Zelensky and located in Sopot, Poland, they were inspired to create the now infamous Crooked House after spending time studying the fairy tale illustrations of Jan Schanzer and the artwork of Per Goldberg. The work of both artists is surreal and otherworldly, something Schotyński and Zelensky perfectly captured in the Krivi Domek. Despite being a relatively recent structure, the Crooked House is already one of the most famous buildings on the planet. This, combined with its location on the already popular Montchiac Street and the fact it includes a shopping center, has made the Crooked House a substantial hub for tourism, drawing in crowds. Their first wish to marvel at its wobbly exterior and then pile on in to splash cash on trinkets. Being the center of tourist attention is something the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain knows an awful lot about. It has been dubbed the world's largest toy, and it was easy to see why. Designed by Canadian-American architect Frank Gehry and inaugurated in 1997, this museum of modern and contemporary art is a delightful toy box of interactive art pieces that capture the imagination of attendees. Its creation has long been hailed as one of the most important moments in the history of architecture because critics, academics, and the general public were all equally blown away by it, all united by a sense of childlike wonder. There was no division. The Guggenheim was a smash hit, referred to by The Independent as an astonishing architectural feat. It is comprised of several interconnecting shapes of glass, titanium, and stone on a 350,000 square foot site just along the Nervion River. From the outside, the museum looks like something like a cross between the Sydney Opera House and a fleet of boats, giving the peculiar aesthetic of several colossal sheets of metal peeling away. While the inside is an absolute circus of stimulating large-scale and site-specific works and installations. It has been so popular that almost the second it opened, it became one of the single most popular tourist attractions in the world, drawing in visitors from around the globe. Within the first 3 years alone, 4 million tourists visited, which generated $546 million. The amount of money that those same guests spent on hotels, restaurants, shops, and transport during their visits completely covered the cost of the building of Guggenheim in the first place. At this point, the museum is an absolute money-making machine. Despite this, it has still been marred by significant controversy that has bubbled up in the years since it was initially universally loved. Many see the museum as nothing more than a symbol of cultural imperialism and gentrification. That wraps up our insane buildings video. Which of these buildings do you think is the most insane? Let us know in the comments. And if you like the video, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when a new video arrives. Thanks for watching.